Hi, and welcome to the module on if functions. You can open the file called if functions to follow along. Now, the if function is probably one of the most single important functions within Excel because you can use it in any industry and any area. It can sometimes seem like a long and complicated formula, but a simple if function is actually very logical and easy to follow. So if we have a look at this particular spreadsheet, we've got a list of employees with their salaries, their date of hire, and we've got a column called a job rating. And basically, our CEO has told us anyone with a job rating of either 4 or 5 will get a bonus of 2,000. And you can see that everybody's job rating is a whole number and it's only from numbers 1 through to 5. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the column a little bit wider so you can see the function as we do it. And we're going to start a simple if function. And let's go through the parameters. So if we start with equals if, the first part of the function, and it's selected in bold for you over here, is the logical test. This is your comparison. And the most important thing about an if function, unless we nest it, or compound it, which we'll learn a little bit later, is that you can only have one comparison. If you would like to add more comparisons, you'd have to use another function inside of the if function, such as and or. So what is your logical test here? What are you trying to work out? We're trying to say that if the job rating is either 4 or 5, then let's give the employee a bonus. So you would click on your job rating, and then there's two ways of doing this. You could either say if that is greater than 3, and because these are whole numbers, that would work. If these were decimals, that would not work. Or you could say, is it greater than or equal to 4? Both would work just as well. So that is your logical test. Then when you put in a comma to move to the next part of your formula, you'll see that the value if true has been bolded for you. If that particular cell is greater than or equal to 4, then what? Then you need to put in your value if true. This could be a number, it could be a text value, or it could be another formula. In this case, we just want to display a value of 2,000. We push comma. If the formula returns a value of false, so if the person did not receive a job rating of greater than or equal to 4, what then happens? And over here you can choose various things. We can choose to display a value of 0. If you would just like nothing to display, you would put in inverted commas. Sorry, I clicked a little bit too quickly there. You would click in inverted commas and no value will be displayed. If you wanted to add text to the formula, you would have to put text in within inverted commas. Otherwise, Excel does not recognize it correctly. So in this case, in between the inverted commas, I'm going to put in text that says no bonus. Once you've done that, your basic if function is complete. You can now copy this function down, and you will very easily, I'm just going to double click the column to make it shorter again, very easily be able to see, based on the values in the corresponding column, which employees get a bonus and for what reason and which do not. The next thing we're going to look at is doing a nested if function. Now, a nested if function we will do if we have other criteria as a value if false. So for example, what we'd like to say is if the job rating is 4 or 5, you get 2,000. That we've covered. But we'd like to go further and say, well, if you got a job rating of 3, you'll get 750. So instead of creating complicated formulas, you can include that within your if function. And we call this a nested if function. So if we double click and have a look at our formula, it's very logical. It works left to right. If J4 is greater than or equal to 4, you'll get a value of 2,000. If not, there's no bonus. at the comma which begins your false statement, just before the false statement, that is where we're going to put in our second if function. So you would type if, open bracket, the job rating is equal to 3, comma, then my value is 750, comma, if not, no bonus. So the value if false statement is the same for both formulas, and we only need to use one. But because we've got another if function inside of an if function, we need to remember to close our parenthesis at the end by adding an additional parenthesis, and this now closes the formula. If we select enter, we can double check, copy our formula down and see if it is working. There's a 750, there's a 750, and you can see it's working where the 750s and the 2000s don't apply. So that is what we call a nested if function, and you can have as many of them as you want, with one value if false being the same, but your value if trues being various if functions. Right, now that we've had a look at the if and the nested if functions, we are now going to have a look at something that we call a compounded if function. So on your if functions workbook, at the bottom you'll see a spreadsheet called compound if. It's exactly the same spreadsheet, but with a little bit of new data. So in this case, what we'd like to say is if the job rating is 4 or 5 and the status is full-time, then you get a bonus of 2000. So now the problem is you have two logical comparisons or criteria that needs to be met in order for the value to be true or false. So what we do is we use two functions within our if function to make this a little bit more easier for us. We use a function called and a function called or. The and function, and if we actually go into the function, you can see when you start typing out the and function, it says checks whether all arguments are true and then will return true if all arguments are true. So it'll make sure that all the criteria is met in order for the value to be true. If you look at the or function checks if any of the arguments are true and then will return true or false. It will only return false if all arguments are false. So because we have two or more criteria that they have to meet, we need to use one of these functions inside of our if function. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start by typing an if function, because that is still how it starts out. And where it asks for the logical test, we now have two different comparisons we need to do. So inside of here, you're going to put in your and function. So if your job rating is still greater than or equal to 4, that's comparison 1, comma, it now asks for the next logical, keeping in mind you can do up to 31 in an AND function. The next one is the status needs to be equal to full-time, and because this is text, we need to put it in inverted commas. Please make sure your spacing is accurate, otherwise the formula will not be accurate. Now that you've finished your two comparisons, very importantly, don't forget to close the bracket of your AND function so that the formula can take you back to finish off your if function. So we put a comma. If this is true, we're giving them 2000, comma. If this is not true, we've decided we're going to put a text entry that says no bonus. And then at the end of it, you need to close your bracket. We've already closed the bracket for the AND, so it shouldn't give you any issues. If it does pop up, you can click OK, and the formula will self-rectify. In this case, I've made a mistake somewhere, which is a good thing. Let's go back and troubleshoot this. So if AND J4 is greater than or equal to, see over there I put F. This should be 4. Right. Now I'm going to copy my function down. You'll see that here he got a rating of 4, but because he's not full-time, he didn't get a bonus. So there's a couple of them here. He got the bonus because both criteria are being met. Here, he's not full-time, and here, he's not full-time. So this is what we call a compounded if function, and it avoids us having to create so many if functions in a single if function, which can become very difficult to read.